What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags here, back with another Four Corners video breaking down tonight's NBA slate, the last one before the All-Star break, courtesy of Osmo.com. Now today, since there's just 3 games, I'll only have 3 corners to hit on, but the 4th corner is you. So make sure to like this video right now and leave a comment down below. Tell me which player on tonight's slate you like the most, and you won't be entered to win anything, but you'll make me feel really good about myself. I want to keep the conversation going in the comments down below, so make sure to just do that now. If you have any questions as well, pop in with those. The first corner I want to hit on is a game with the Thunder visiting the Pelicans. This one's got a 236.5 combined total, which is the highest on the slate by 11 points. This total here represents a 5-point boost for Oklahoma City and a 1-point boost for New Orleans. Anthony Davis has shot just 8 and 9 times in his last 2 games, and if you watch the games, you can see his teammates are really not feeding him the ball, almost to the point of freezing him out. He's not running as much screens, or at least in that Orlando game he didn't in particular. In the Memphis game, he did a little bit more, but he's not screening, he's not getting the ball on the screen and rolls, so it's tough for him to get shots if people aren't actually willing to feed him the ball. That said, I do think that has to level out a little bit. I saw Anthony Davis still trying out there. He was still trying to get blocks, still trying to get rebounds. He just wasn't getting any because the Magic were hitting everything they shot up. But overall, I think it's a bad Pelicans spot because they're really dysfunctional, and it's obvious watching them. But I think at some point that has to level out. And Anthony Davis at $9,000 on DraftKings is just too cheap. Jrue Holiday's usage has been a little steadier here, and he's been really good versus the Thunder so far this season. He's had games of 63.25, 45.25, and 49 fantasy points versus Oklahoma City this year. I don't really see any issue with him. And again, the Vegas total here tells us it's going to stay a close one. The Thunder are just 4-point favorites on the road. So if we're going to go by Vegas, and that is what we try to do here, that is the defining principle of DFS, is using a Vegas total to help you have a barometer to go for every single game, every single night. And that's what I'm going to try to do here, is I want to trust the Pelicans one more time and hope for the best. To be a question here, which I don't think anybody's asking right now at least, is whether Jahlil Okafor or Julius Randle will start. I think that if you want to shake things up for the Pelicans, the way to do that is to move Randle as the starting lineup where he's been more effective. Going to take a little usage away from Davis again, but I think Randle is not as dedicated to perhaps being a dick to Anthony Davis as his other teammates are. So I'd like Randle being the starting lineup if that were to happen. Though right now it does seem like Jahlil Okafor has a pretty firm grasp on the starting center job. I would just keep an eye on that one closer to lock, because I think they get more appealing if Randle joins the starters and Jahlil Okafor comes off the bench and avoids Steven Adams in the middle. KNICKS Williams has been a popular player over the last few weeks, but I think we saw what the downsides are of playing him now that E'Twaun Moore is back in the lineup. E'Twaun Moore is going to soak some usage up that KNICKS Williams really needs, because if the team isn't playing well, he's not getting the little assist upside that he's had. He's probably not getting as much rebounding upside. So KNICKS Williams is a guy who's been on a pretty narrow margin overall, and with E'Twaun Moore shooting 13 times that last game, that's going to take some away from KNICKS Williams, and I think that makes him a less viable play, while it makes E'Twaun Moore a perfectly okay one. Russell Westbrook has been proudly carrying his historic triple-double run, surpassing Wilt Chamberlain in the amount of consecutive games last time that the Thunder played. So I think Russell Westbrook is obviously a guy, you may not know this, guy loves his stats, so I think he's going to continue trying to push that. He had 63 fantasy points last time out versus Portland, despite shooting 6 for 19. So Russell Westbrook doing a great job, even though the shooting has gotten substantially worse throughout the year. But he could have crazy upside here if his shot falls and he continues playing the way he has at pace versus New Orleans. Paul George is the even hotter hand here. He's coming off of an 88.5 fantasy point day versus Portland, and he's also been over 45 points in his last 2 games. And also that game versus Portland was his first triple-double of the year, so he's coming for Russ's shtick as well. Paul George looks great again. Trying to find a way to get Paul George and Westbrook in a lineup is going to be tough, but I think that is a move to try to make somehow using the value both available on this side and elsewhere on the slate that we'll talk about. But overall, Paul George looks great. He's worth paying up for, and his run right now is really something to see. He's been an amazing player both in a fantasy perspective and a real-life one. I'm not super into Steven Adams because of how he's been yielding stats to all these other guys as they try to chase their milestones, but I think that Raymond Felton and Deonte Burton are both interesting plays here as punts. They both got pretty decent minutes as a result of Dennis Schroeder and Jeremy Grant being out. Burton was more effective as well than Patrick Patterson, who started that game for Jeremy Grant. I think these guys could see some run tonight. It's, again, a pace-up spot, or at least a high-pace spot for the Thunder. Their pace is actually a little bit higher than the Pelicans at this point. But overall, it's going to be a fast game with a high total here. I think you can put some of these guys in there, Felton and Burton in particular, feel okay about it. Terrence Ferguson I would not feel good about, but if you want to pivot the scoring of George and Westbrook, that is a play to make. It's just one that's probably going to only happen 1 out of every million times. Next corner to hit on is a game with the Knicks visiting the Hawks, and this game is a 225.5 total, which is second highest on the slate, and it represents a 5-point boost for Atlanta and a 3.5-point boost for New York. Trae Young's been priced up industry-wide, but getting 38 minutes and 54.5 fantasy points in his first game without Jeremy Lin. It's a pretty noteworthy flag to have in the ground, and this all comes despite Trae Young shooting just 6 for 19 in that game. This is going to be a more profitable spot defensively going against the Knicks, so I like Trae Young here quite quite a bit. I think there's some risk that Jalen Adams takes a few minutes away from him here, that now he's expected to be back in the lineup, and his contract has been converted from a two-way contract to a regular one. So you're going to see him get some backup minutes here. Could cut into Trae Young a little bit, but it's hard to see Jalen Adams taking the run that Jeremy Lin had earlier this year. I would find Jalen Adams mostly unplayable, and Trae Young looks good. I think he's worth paying for the price up, and especially if that drives his ownership down, which it seems like it's going to right now. John Collins can disappear in games, but going against the Knicks team who's allowing 48.1 rebounds a game, one of the worst marks in the league, it's a pretty noteworthy spot for him. Collins isn't going to find a great defensive resistance on the Knicks side. I think he's got in a perfectly good spot here. I think in particular his offensive rebounding rate is going to be noteworthy. He does have a 12.7% offensive rebounding rate, which could end up resulting in a lot of easy putbacks. Same thing for Alex Len, too, going against the second unit. He's going to have a little more athletic competition in Mitchell Robinson, but I think Alex Len can heat up quite a bit here, and I think he's an interesting punt play to have in there if you are going to try to differentiate your lineup on this 3-game slate. Taurean Prince looks like a decent play on the wing, and it seemed like he picked up most of the usage that was left behind by Jeremy Lin. He put up 14 shots in 30 minutes in that last game, which is a high for shots in his most recent pretty much a lot of games. So Taurean Prince looks like he's in a decent spot here. He's, I think, a safe play, probably not one with a ton of ceiling, but I think he's a good enough one to consider, given, again, a short slate where options are going to be short, and the Knicks defense on the wing just not that good. And the Knicks rotation is absolutely a mess, and it's hard really to advocate for anyone on this Knicks side because David Fizdale can just tweak things in a million different ways and make it worse in ways which, honestly, I can't foresee, or even the greatest minds in the world of NBA analysis, even people who are professionals, couldn't figure out what David Fizdale is going to do on any given night. But I think Dennis Smith is the guy who is worth trusting the most right now. He's projected for 39% ownership, which does seem pretty high given how he's performed recently. But he's going to get that first crack versus Atlanta. I think that's what matters here. Atlanta's not a good defensive team, obviously, as anybody who's followed basketball this year would tell you. But I think more than that, it's just about who gets the hot hand here. And if Dennis Smith really heats up, he's going to seize minutes away from the other guys on the second unit. He's going to keep seeing the run. And either way, he's around 30 minutes per game. So this is a spot where you know he's going to get about 30 minutes. It's against Atlanta. There's really all you need to know for what Dennis Smith's prospects are just based off those two things. Mitchell Robinson and Kadeem Allen have been mostly steady off the bench, though Kadeem Allen obviously taking a few minutes away from Dennis Smith based on where he was running at when he first got traded to New York. But I think both those guys look pretty good. Mitchell Robinson in particular just showing a ton of upside recently in about mid-20s minutes. There's a possibility that DeAndre Jordan sees some run back. It's a back-to-back, though, so I would imagine DeAndre Jordan's not going to get more minutes on the second half of a back-to-back than he did on the first half. But who knows with, again, David Fizdale. But Mitchell Robinson's really been productive in a way where I would want to make sure I'm matching the field on him today. Damian Johnson put up 16 shots yesterday, and he also stole the second half start from Mario Hezonja, who's now doubtful with a leg injury today. So we could see Damian Johnson picking up some run. He's also going to be out of that group of competing for the backup minutes behind Kevin Knox. So now it'll be Knox comparing to Alonzo Trier, and it'll be Damian Johnson probably on his own plane of minutes, which could see some useful run. So I like Damian Johnson a little bit tonight. I think he's going to get the minutes. Whether he does enough with them is hard to be seen, but at a very cheap price today, industry-wide, I think having some Damian Johnson and matching the field on where he's going to be does make sense. As I mentioned, because of Mario Hezonja potentially being out tonight, it looks like Kevin Knox and Alonzo Trier will be competing for the wing minutes at the same spot. If Kevin Knox heats up again, he's going to get that starter crack. So if he gets going versus Atlanta, he could seize some minutes back from Trier. But if he doesn't, and Kevin Knox has really been a poor shooter on the year, under 40% shooting, and he hasn't shown any life of trickling up, even though he's been shooting upwards of 21 times a game recently. I think Kevin Knox has a shot to get going, but Alonzo Trier as the fallback option seems pretty good as well. Some exposure to both guys probably makes sense because, again, this is a bad Atlanta Hawks team. It's just going to be a matter of who gets going first. The last corner to hit on is a game with the lowest total on the slate, but one that's still not too bad. 214-point combined total for the Hornets visiting the Magic. The Hornets are getting a 5.7-point drop, but the Magic are getting a 3.1-point boost, so it's good for one side. The Magic, though, really clamping down defensively, and that's probably why Charlotte not getting as much love from Vegas here. Jeremy Lamb's currently projected to be one of the highest owned players on the slate at 42% expected ownership, and it's honestly makes sense. He's been shooting a ton recently, pushing that usage rate up. He shot 22, 14, 16, and 17 shots in his last 4 games. That bodes pretty well for Jeremy Lamb at a reasonable price. Again, the Magic have been doing a good job defensively, so I think there's some risk, but if you're going to shoot that many times in a game, you're going to have a decent shot at hitting value. I think Jeremy Lamb's a perfectly fine play, even though I'm not sure. I might go a little bit under the field on him based on that ownership being so high. Marvin Williams has been another steady value recently for the Hornets, and I think he looks fine again as well. Not a crazy high ceiling, but a guy who on a slate like this might open up enough salary for you to be able to fit in some of the higher priced guys who are going to be very important to own. So I think I'm fine with Marvin Williams. I prefer him a little bit to Nick Batum, who's actually done a better job assisting and rebounding lately, but he doesn't shoot the ball, and you generally need to shoot the ball to hit fantasy value unless you're a guy. I mean, you know what? Even Mitchell Robinson shoots the ball. So no, you have to shoot the ball to have fantasy value, and Nick Batum is not doing that. So overall, I think that Marvin Williams is a slightly better play, but Nick Batum, he's fine. I guess, on a slate of this size. You can tell my enthusiasm for this game is really shining through. Cody Zeller's also been looking solid recently, and he also got 35 minutes in that last game versus Indiana because of the bigs there just needing a little more attention. I think it could be a similar situation today. Nikola Vucevic in the mid-30s of minutes. I think you could see Zeller in there with him because really there isn't anybody else that the Hornets have who can limit Nikola Vucevic in a meaningful way, unless they think that Bismack Biyombo is worth dusting off and getting back out there. Evan Fournier and Aaron Gordon look fine as mid-price plays. Both guys projected to be in the high 20s, low 30s ownership tonight. I'm fine matching the field there because I think they just look solid. Jonathan Isaac, I'm a little bit less sold on. He's been playing really well recently. Over his last 7 games, 6 of them have been over 29 fantasy points, and 4 of them have been over 36 fantasy points. So even at his elevated price, he's actually been doing well. And last game, he shot 18 times, which is a lot for Jonathan Isaac. But I don't know that I'm buying into him quite as much with his price all the way up. I get why you might like him. I get why it makes sense. And again, this is a good matchup for the Magic overall. But Jonathan Isaac, to me, is just hard to trust. And I think I would trust these other guys substantially more than him. But maybe I'll be convinced wrong. Isaac is a young player, and he might be just rounding into the form of who he is. Despite a great spot, Nikola Vucevic's ownership should be lower than it would seem because his price is up. He's hitting $10,000 on DraftKings. First time he's in the 5-digit numbers so far this year. But it's been well-deserved. He's been really doing a great job. Dominated the Pelicans last game and would have had an even bigger day if they didn't blow him out. So overall, Vucevic looks fine to me. I think paying up to be contrarian here could make sense, especially if you're not loading up on the other games with the other higher-priced guys. Last but not least, I have to mention Terrence Ross because I think he's gotten the short end of the stick recently with the starting group really heating up versus New Orleans. He didn't have to do a lot in that game. And I think before that, he also lost some usage to Isaiah Briscoe and Wes Iwundu in the second unit. But Terrence Ross is just a good player, and I like him a lot, and I just want to talk about him. I think he does a good job. He shoots the ball well, and he does heat up pretty well when people aren't expecting it. So I'm going to have some exposure to him tonight just in case the starters falter. But overall, Terrence Ross, a guy who's maybe a little bit overpriced right now, but I think worth considering still because we have seen 40-point upside from him within the last few weeks. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on today's NBA slate. Again, make sure to like this video and leave a comment down below telling me who your favorite play is on tonight's slate because, look, options are pretty narrow, so help everybody out. If you have any questions as well, drop in the comments. I'll pop in later, answer some of them if I can. And even though our YouTube giveaway is over for our anniversary, we are still doing one on our Twitter. So go to @Osmo_com, follow the handle, and check out the pinned tweet to see what you can do because we are giving that one today at the end of the day. So right after Live Before Lock, that'll be going out. So make sure to do whatever that tweet's asking you on the pinned tweet at Osmo_com on Twitter. And also use the promo code Switch and Hedge, get 50% off your first month at Osmo, any package at all. So if you use an NBA package right now, also, we're giving away all access to all the other sports that are going on right now because it is the All-Star break. So you get access to PGA, NASCAR, and NHL over the next week. So if all you have to do is just use that promo code Switch and Hedge, get 50% off your first month of NBA. You'll be getting the NBA today, and you get all the rest of the sports for the next week until the NBA starts back up the back half of next week. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on everything. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like the video, leave a comment down below, and I'll be back again soon with another NBA breakdown. Enjoy your All-Star break.